Hey guys, Mr. Jesse here, and I'm so glad you could join us for Studio 45 Online. This month, we were talking all about the big idea of kindness. And kindness is simply showing others they are valuable by how you treat them. If you missed the first couple weeks, hey, go back and watch them. The first week, we talked about how we can be kind to others because ultimately God has been so kind to us. In fact, people are valuable because God says they are, and so we want to show them that kindness. Last week, we talked about Ruth, such an awesome book of the Bible, and we learned how we can be kind to those who are closest to us, to our friends and family, and sometimes we can take them for granted. Today, we are going the extra mile with an awesome story, but first, we have a fun game. You know, when it comes to being a super fan and cheering others on, there is one unsung hero of the sports field. I know exactly who I'm talking about. I don't know if you've got an idea, but I'm of course talking about the fluffy, the fun, the mascots, which is why today we have a very fun game called the Mascot Dancer. Now, this is a really fun game with our staff. They are gonna come up, they're gonna dance, but they're gonna dance in a cool mascot costume. Your job is try to pair the right staff with the right mascot, and we'll see how you do. Let's check out their dancing and see if you can solve who's behind which mask. Here we go. So you saw their dance moves. Here's who you got to pair up. So just simply talk about it as a family, talk about it with your group, or you can do it individually. But the idea is you have to pair the right picture to the right number of dancers, left to right, 1 through 4. See if you can get it, and then we'll reveal the answers. Did you get it, or was it unexpected? You know, today we are talking about something that was unexpected, and it actually came from Jesus. And to talk about it, we have a special guest storyteller who's going to bring us the message for today. I'm really excited, so let's check it out.
The Bible is more than a single book. It's a collection of 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry written by dozens of different authors over thousands of years that all come together to tell one big story. It's a bigger story than you can even imagine. It's a big story about a really big God and what He did to rescue us. It shows us who we are and what we were created to do. Discover the story that shows you the character of God.
Hey everyone, my name is Kaylee, and I am really excited to be here this morning in Studio 45 to bring you our third talk in a series about kindness. And today I'm going to start off the message with a story. So I have 3 boys, and about 10 years ago, my firstborn was only about 9 months old, and he and I took a plane to Indianapolis to visit my parents. So on the way home, we get on a plane to come back to Kansas, and about 15 minutes into the flight, we hear the pilot come on the intercom and tell us that we have to turn around and we have to make an emergency landing because the brakes are not working on the plane. And the next 15 minutes were straight out of a movie. It felt like, it was not, it was very real, but it felt like a movie where the plane's about to crash. And the stewardess would walk down the aisle, and she was making sure everyone read the pamphlet, you know, that thing we ignore before takeoff. Well, I suggest you read it now because it will come back if you need it. So they would open the pamphlet and say, here's how you leave the plane if we crash. Here's what you do if there's a fire. Here's what you do if the power goes out. Here's what happens. And then they said, here's how you hold your baby while we land. Because we want you and your baby to both be protected in case of a crash. And so then when we're almost about to land, the flight attendants are sitting in their emergency seats, and they are literally yelling instructions at us. And they warned us, we knew this was gonna happen. But I cannot tell you how scary it was to be sitting there by myself with my 9-month-old baby, waiting for this plane to land and just praying that we wouldn't crash. And I was so grateful when we landed because we didn't crash. I don't know how many angels it took to land that plane safely, but we crashed without a fire. And I was so thankful that everything was okay. But then there was the next thing, which is the fact that I still had to leave Indianapolis, but I was still here. And so everyone was in a hurry to get off the plane and be the first to get their next flight booked so that they could get out on time. And I, having a baby, knew that I would just be slower. And so I waited till everyone got off and I was the last one off the plane. And as I come off the jet bridge, I get in front of the ticket counter. I walk by a ticket counter where there is a woman who works for the airline, and she smiles at me and she says, "You'll need to go over here and they'll book you with another flight." And so I go to walk over to that line that she pointed me to, and I literally walk like 2 feet. I'm standing in front of her table, and I'm at the end of an entire plane's worth of people, and I'm at the very end of the line. And I knew that I was probably not going to get a seat on a plane to get out that day. I was still just very grateful to be safe, and so I didn't mind standing in the line. And I was really grateful to this woman because it was the first smiling face I'd seen since we landed. Everything was very serious on the plane, and so to walk into the airport and have somebody greet me with a smile and be kind to me was really important. Now, I will tell you, her kindness didn't end there, but I want to save that for the end. The Sermon on the Mount is a part of Scripture. It's in the book of Matthew, and it's in Matthew 5, chapter 41. And in the Sermon on the Mount, what you see is Jesus standing on the bottom of a hill and people standing up on the hill, okay? And so Matthew 5:41 says this: "Suppose someone forces you to go 1 mile, go 2 miles with them." Well, what does that mean? I mean, that must have meant something to the Jewish people, but right here in Wichita, Kansas, we don't really get what that means. So let's take ourselves, not in a plane, and we're going to travel 2,000 years ago, okay? And we are going to see just exactly what was going on in that area in that time. Here we go, traveling. So Jesus, like I said, is giving this big sermon. It's a famous sermon. It's in the book of Matthew. I encourage you guys to go look it up and read it with your parents. It's a really cool thing. Jesus spent a lot of his time teaching the Jewish people how to live a new way. He didn't just talk about the kingdom of God, but he was saying, let's stop living this way and live this way. And this was the way of God's kingdom. And so here we are on the Sermon on the Mount. This is the location of it. And so it's not like a mountain, it's the Mount of Beatitudes. And so they were sitting on this hill while Jesus was at the bottom. It was almost like an amphitheater. And he's preaching this sermon to them, telling them about how to live like the kingdom of God. And so he says, Matthew 5:41, "Suppose someone forces you to go 1 mile, go 2 miles with them." Now we all might kind of go, huh? But I will tell you, the Jewish people that day, they went, huh? And their jaws dropped to the floor. And this is why. Back then, Rome ruled Jerusalem. Rome ruled the Jewish people. And so Rome was kind of about two things. They were about control and they were about power, okay? They were all about controlling what was going on, and they were about using their power to do it. And that didn't bring a lot of value to the Jewish people. And there was a lot of conflict between the Jewish people and Rome because the Jewish people, their God, our God, it's the same as theirs, was so important to them. They loved him so much. And the way that they worshiped him was very important to them. And there was a lot of emotions in them about how they felt about their God and how they felt about their lives and their families and how they felt about the government over them. And so Rome did not like emotion. They wanted control and they wanted power. And so they created a ton of laws to try to control the Jewish people, when really all it did is make them feel less valued. One of the laws said that if a Roman officer is traveling on the road and they approached a Jewish person and said, "Carry my bag," that Jewish person, by law, had to carry their bag for 1 mile. So let's look at what a Jewish bag might have, but we're going to kind of update it to maybe what we think it might have. And this is really fun. Okay, so a a Roman officer might have a spare helmet, right? I mean, his helmet is protecting his head. You don't want that to break. And while our football helmet is made of fancy plastic and foam, theirs was made of iron or maybe some bronze. So a really heavy helmet, much heavier than this football helmet. He might have a spare uniform because, there's no laundromats. What if he messes one up, gets a hole in one? He's got an extra one. I know we have a Broncos jersey, but we can imagine that it's just a Roman uniform. Then we have food. They did not have a McDonald's on every corner. They did not have Subway. They didn't have home delivery for food or for your groceries or anything like that. It's not like he could be hey, I'm at mile marker 35, send me some pizza. Like, that just didn't happen. So they had to travel with their own food and drinks. So you can imagine that what they traveled with was a lot. And it was probably very, very heavy. So what would happen is the Roman officer would get on the road, and he would find the first Jewish person he could find, and he would say, you, carry my bag. And so that Jewish person, no matter which direction they were going, had to take that Roman officer's bag and carry it all the way to a mile. Now, the Jewish people really hated this law. And, I mean, rightfully so. It doesn't make anybody feel very valuable or cared for by their government. And so the Jewish people set up mile markers along the road. So they knew that when they got to their 1 mile mark, they could drop the bag, say, I've done my job, I've been as kind as I have to be, and I'm going to move on. So then Jesus is saying, in Matthew 5, what Jesus is saying is he's saying, stop asking how kind do you have to be, and start asking how kind are you willing to be. That's a whole new concept, especially doing that for a group of people who don't value them. But Jesus is preaching about God's kingdom, not about a kingdom here on earth. And he says, suppose someone forces you to go 1 mile. I want you to be willing to go 2. And so the Jewish people are thinking, you want me to go 1 mile, say, I'm not done, and willingly go the 2nd mile? That's exactly what Jesus is saying. And that's an extra level of kindness. Going the extra mile, literally for the Jewish people, was a whole new level of kindness. And it was a whole new way to look at it. And so this isn't just a question for today, or for then. This is not just a question for back then. If you think about it, if the Jewish people were asking, how kind do I have to be? That's kind of a common question we ask today, isn't it? We ask, how kind do I have to be in this situation, right? But this verse is for us too. We may not be walking like a literal mile or extra mile, but Jesus is saying, stop asking how kind do you have to be and start asking how kind are you willing to be. So now that we've traveled to Jerusalem, let's go back to Wichita and let's look at a couple situations that might come up in your guys' lives. So the first one I think about in the first situation is with trash, okay? You're at school, you know your teacher cleans up after school every day. She goes around and picks up all the trash on the floor. But what if you were getting up to sharpen your pencil and you see trash on the floor? Let's talk about what the unkind option would be, okay? Because I feel like this is a really easy one. And the unkind thing would be to leave it, right? Ignore it, sharpen your pencil, get on with your day. Your teacher will clean it up at the end. Well, let's have you guys think about for a moment, what would be a basic level of kindness for this moment? What would be the basic level of kindness? As kind as we have to be in this situation. And what we came up with when we discussed it is that it would be just to pick up the trash. Chances are the pencil sharpener is right by the trash can. So not a big deal. We can all do that, right? But let's talk about the extra mile kindness, the kind of kindness that Jesus is talking about. And I want you to think about at home, what is an extra mile kindness look like in this moment? And we talked about it here, and this is what we came up with. What if you clean the whole room? What if on your way to the pencil sharpener, you just cleaned up all the trash you saw instead of just the trash in your path? I bet your teacher would really appreciate that extra kindness, huh? Okay, let's look at another situation. Another situation is something that's actually really common, and it can be really sad, is we see that there's always one or two kids in a class that get made fun of, right? So you see a group of people in your class making fun of a kid, and they pull you in and they say, hey, what do you think about this person? The unkind thing would be to laugh with them, right? Add in maybe an extra weird story or something that you saw that would just make them laugh with you, right? But I know none of you are that way. None of you are going to do that. So we're going to go to the kind option. And I want you to think about what would be the basic kind option in this situation. We talked about it and we came up with this: walk away. Sometimes our silence is the best way to tell people, I don't agree with you. And walking away means that you're not going to be a part of it. And that's a basic kindness, and I'm sure that kid would notice. But what's extra mile kindness in this situation? Think about that. What would be an extra mile kindness in this moment? Well, we talked about it and we came up with this. You could tell a teacher. There's a lot of options for this. If you're feeling super brave, you can just tell the kids right there, hey, that's not nice. You don't want people to talk about you that way, and I wouldn't be a part of talking about you that way. So let's not talk about them that way, no matter how you feel. And so you can tell a teacher and have them help you, or you can stand up for them right then and there. It kind of depends on the situation. But that's extra mile kindness. So this concept of having extra mile kindness really reminds me of our memory verse for this month. And it comes from Colossians 3. You are God's chosen people. You are holy and dearly loved. So put on tender mercy and kindness as if they were clothes. You guys, none of us really want to be here. And all of us have a lot of practice being here, right? This is the most natural. But Jesus is saying this, extra mile kindness, this is clothing. This is clothes you put on. So when you put on your pants and your shirt and your shoes and your socks and your winter gear for this week, you also can put on kindness. Tender mercy and kindness is what causes this extra mile kindness. And we have a wonderful example of that in Jesus. He didn't just tell the Jewish people in the Sermon on the Mount to be extra kind. He didn't just say, be willing to be more kind than you have to. He showed us how to put it on like clothes. He did it for 3 solid years. He had people following him and watching him do this very thing every single day. And then we watched him walk across up to the top of a hill, and he got on it and he died for us. That is an extra mile. That's an extra million miles in my heart. And it impacted the world, you guys. Just that extra mile kindness can impact the world. And I know that if Jesus did it, I want to do it. He's the example I want to follow. And so you guys may think, oh, I'm a kid. I don't have that much power. Well, let me tell you, the story that I started telling you today, and I'm going to finish in a moment, that happened 10 years ago. And I'm still talking about the impact it made. Do you guys want to hear how this story ended? Okay, here's how it ended. So I'm standing in that line, right? The whole plane's in front of me, and I'm standing right here, and the ticket lady is like right here. And she kind of goes, excuse me. She kind of whispers at me. She says, come on over here. Let me see what I can do for you. So I walk over, and I stand in front of her, and she gets me on the very last open seat on the very last available plane leaving that day. And so in an hour, I was on another plane heading home, and I was able to get home that day. All because that lady showed me extra mile kindness. She saw me standing there with my baby. She knew what I had just been through, and she didn't ask herself, how kind do I have to be? She asked herself, how kind am I willing to be? And because of that moment, I experienced Jesus in the Indianapolis airport 10 years ago, and it was through that woman. And so when I talk to you guys about, what it looks like for you as a 4th and 5th grader to have extra mile kindness, I want you to know that you can have such an impact on someone today that in 10 years, they are still talking about your kindness. If you put on this extra clothing, this extra mile of tender mercy and kindness, if you put that on, you can impact the world. And we all know our world needs extra kindness. And not just this basic level, not the basic kind that we talked about, but the kind where we look at a situation, we ask, not how kind do I have to be? We ask, how kind am I willing to be? And you guys can change the world through that impact. Let me pray and ask Jesus to help us with that. Jesus, I just thank you so much for your example of what it means to put on tender mercy and kindness. Thank you for changing the question for us. We don't want to be as kind as we have to be. We want to be willing to go the extra mile in kindness. We just thank you that you have shown us what that looks like. We are human and we can be selfish. We can have other things we want to do. We could be uncomfortable with situations that are hard. But Jesus, we just ask for you to give us the courage to step out and put on tender mercy and kindness, just like you did. And we ask for your help in knowing when we need to go the extra mile. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.
Man, I love that story out of the book of Matthew, and it's so challenging to think of the big idea of kindness when it comes through the lens of what Jesus challenged those disciples and people that listened to him talk about going the extra mile. It wasn't about just trying your hardest, it was about being kind, even when you didn't necessarily have to be, which is why I love today's question of the day. Everybody at home, you know what to say. Reveal the question. Have you ever received unexpected kindness? I love this question, and here's the thing. We want you to talk about it with whoever you're watching with. Maybe it's friends of yours, maybe it's your family, but ask this question and go around the room, share your stories of, hey, have you ever received unexpected kindness? I think you'll notice two things. I think you'll notice, one, how big of a deal it is when we experience kindness that we don't see coming. And two, I think you'll see how rare it is. In fact, it might be kind of hard for you to come up with an answer to this question. Talk about that. Why is it that way? And what would happen if we, as followers of Jesus, decided to give out unexpected kindness? I think we might just change the world. Now, don't forget, our midweek content has some great ways that you can encourage others. In fact, some ways that you can surprise others with your very own brand of unexpected kindness. So make sure you check out our videos on Wednesday, and we will see you next weekend.